Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Business of Wellness podcast. My guest today is a dear friend, and I've been so excited to do this episode. Jitesh Vaswani, meditation and breathwork expert for the art of living. I guess you're kind of a disciple too, I would say, right, of Gurudev.
Yes.
You have your own podcast, which you were kind enough to have me on, Beyond the Know. I was really blown away by some of the guests you've had on too. They've had some wonderful guests. A TEDx speaker, and now an entrepreneur. So recently decided to leave the corporate world.
Yes.
So that was a big transition. So I definitely want to go down that rabbit hole a little bit.
Absolutely.
But where I wanted to start was go back, to your childhood a bit, because when I was listening to your TED talk, you talked about studying for this exam to get into, I guess, the Indian equivalent of MIT. Effectively, it sounds like.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, 2008 is when I graduated high school. So every Indian kid, it's very interesting dynamic there, right? Like a lot of kids who are preparing, you want to get into a good university, and engineering is one of. So either you can be an engineer, lawyer, or doctor. I mean, now the options are very
Jewish.
open.
It's the same.
There's a lot of family pressure. There's also societal pressure, and plus, the society looks at you as, like, if you clear that exam, it's called the Indian Institute of Technology, IIT JEE, and the competition is so tough. So if you clear that exam, you're like, you're the boss. Like, people respect, like, there's like a lot of earned respect. There's like this whole thing that the society has created around it. And when I was, I wanted to be an engineer, and that was one of my dreams, to clear that exam. I did not. But I came very close, and preparing for it taught me a lot of stuff, right? Like resilience, perseverance, not being afraid to work hard. But at the same time, it comes at the cost of learning all those lessons too early in your life. I don't know if that's even a thing, right? Like before you even get to explore something, explore life, explore different avenues of life. You're put in this machine almost, right, where you have to just train your mind to just, go at it. Like, so it's very interesting.
Did you really? Was it just because of sort of the family and maybe more broadly cultural pressure? Because like I can't imagine being a kid and be like, I really want to be an engineer when I get older.
Exactly. I mean, that's true, right? Like, no, I think I joke about it, like in India, like you become an engineer first and then you decide what you don't want to do with your life.
Right.
So, but I did have an interest in science though, right? Like when I was in my middle school, I did have interest in research, science, and just learning about the universe. And for me, science was a way to just learn what's around me, right? But was that going to translate into engineering or like a technological kind of career path? Probably not. It was just intrigue at that point. I think it was a combination of that, a little bit of that, plus societal expectation. Personally, for me.
Well, so at the same time, I think when you were, if I remember correctly, you told me when you were 15 is when you got involved in meditation and breath work with Gurudev. So that's a completely different.
It was very interesting. So I actually first took a program as part of a summer class. Like how I'm sure, like here also in schools, like during the summer break, there are activities that the kids participate in. One of the activities that my school was offering, and I was 12 when I did this, was this program called Art Excel, and now it's called Sky Kids or whatever. And basically, it's a program for like personality development, but also learning breathing, meditation, a way to emotionally learn how to regulate your emotions and nervous system. And so it was very useful. And I think when I was in my 7th grade, and that's when I first took it. I practiced it for a month, and like any good practice, I fell off the practice, right? Like when you enroll in a gym and you're very enthusiastic. We're in January right now, so probably a lot of people are taking a lot of resolutions, and then eventually, it falls off, like they fall off the practice. So for me, that was the case as well. But then what it did for me was it planted a seed that, okay, if I need something, if I need a fallback option, if I need to learn how to, manage my emotions or my mind, I can always come back to this, because I always had a good memory about it. So when I was in my high school is when I actually reconnected with the practice, when I was going through that really tough phase in my life, and because of the pressure to perform, to study, to clear this exam, and there were times when um, I think for those 2 years in my high school, the 11th grade and 12th grade, I don't think I ever slept more than 3 or 4 hours,
Wow.
and you had to be constantly studying, doing practice tests and like learning these very advanced concepts. It was interesting, the concepts that I learned during my 11th and 12th grade when I actually went to university for engineering. I carried with them for the first 3 years off. They were like engineering level concepts that you have to train for. So in my high school, I reconnected with the practice, and it helped me stay grounded and focused and sane. I would say.
Well, so if I remember from this story correctly, you had like a panic or anxiety attack like the night before the exam, the big. So you've studied for years.
Yes.
Right. Was it just that because you were newer to the breath work and the meditation, you weren't able to harness it in the way that you can now?
I think it did help me even then.
Okay.
It's just that the pressure is so high that sometimes you just can't avoid it. I remember that the night before that exam, I just couldn't sleep at all. Just because it was that pivotal moment that you're working towards for years, and now it's becoming a reality. And I think I just couldn't sleep at all. I couldn't share that with any of my friends, because during teenage, there's also a lot of, whatever. Like you want to show off to your friends. You want to be cool. So you can't show, like, at least in those days. Now I think it's okay for people to show emotions and people to express that they're having a hard time. In the West, it's even more okay, I guess. There's still room to improve. But on the eastern part of the world, is very interesting, where like talking about emotions is anyways taboo. Right now the world is improving, but this is almost I was in high school, I was probably 18, now I'm 34, so you can imagine, like 15 years ago almost, the world was very different even then. So it was hard to express your emotions to your friends, to your family, to anyone, right? Because nobody would understand. Art of Living was probably the only place, my mentor, my community there was the only place where I could openly talk about it and be like, hey, I'm feeling a certain way. Now, what do I need to do to balance myself, to bring myself back? But that night I distinctly remember I was just pacing in my room, back and forth. I just couldn't sleep at all. And I feel like that was part of the reason why when I was doing the actual exam, I messed up on a lot of things which I was so confident about, right? Like when I went back home and I redid the exam, like just to see how I would fare if I was not stressed, and I would have cleared it very easily. So it's if anything, I think it's a life lesson for those around us, that how important it is to learn how to properly manage your emotions, and it takes years to develop that skill, right? Like anything else, like we are stuck in our patterns in our mind, and to come out of those patterns, I think it takes a lot of practice, a lot of training. And now I just look at it as a learning lesson, or like a stepping stone towards bigger things in life. And hopefully this inspires kids or anybody, actually any age, to start learning how to manage your own mind and emotions.
So this is my own ignorance, so I apologize in advance. But so, because again, my experience with the Indian culture is very similar to Jewish culture. It's all about education and what career you have and all of that. But it's like but the part that's different is there's not a whole bunch of mindfulness and meditation and breath work in the Jewish community. So I'm curious, like the dichotomy of those two things, because you're like, well, it's really hard to talk about your emotions, but then you do in your in the Art of Living circles,
Yes.
right? How common, how pervasive is, I mean, I know he's presented to hundreds of millions of people, so how pervasive is it in the Indian culture to be about yoga and meditation and mindfulness and breath work and all of that?
That's a great question. And actually, I think in the last couple of decades, it has seen a revival in the Indian culture. You won't believe it. Um, when India got independence, and I think it has a very cultural, geopolitical answer, unfortunately. Like when India got independence in 1947, a lot of that colonial mindset still pervaded. right? Which meant degrading your own culture and talking down about the own culture. So I think in the last 2 decades, even in India, there was a revival about mindfulness and meditation and yoga, and start owning some of the practices which came from the land. And the work of Gurudev, for example, is very critical in reviving that, not just in the West but also in the East. So it's very interesting. So 15 years ago, even though those practices were still prevalent, but also it's 1.3 billion that people 1.3 billion people in that land, and if you compare the percentage, it was still very small percentage of people who were talking about meditation or mindfulness or even practicing it. So yes, the practices come from that land, and now if you see, people are much more aware, they're much more open, they're much more receptive to the practices, which probably was originally passed down from generation to generation, but it was lost somewhere in the middle.
Well, so maybe talk a little bit about then, how old are you when you come over to the U.S.?
I was right after my undergrad, so I would be around 21.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what was the impetus for you to come over here?
So interesting. So then, education was still part of, my drive. And like, of course, society was still telling me what to do and what not to do. So when I did go through my engineering, there was a few things which I really enjoyed. And one of the things that I enjoyed was electromagnetics, microwaves, antennas, frequencies. And it was kind of like a parallel between what I was, how I was growing spiritually, and also at the same time understanding it from a physics standpoint, right? For me, like I said, science was a way to understand the universe, right? So electromagnetics, understanding waves and how this universe functions was very exciting to me. So one of the professors of that program, his name is Dr. Bolanis, and he used to teach at ASU. So I really, I had read a few of his books, and in my mind I was trying to reconcile like how does waves work, how do waves work, and Maxwell's equations, and I was very technical back then, almost like a nerd for science, and I developed that knack. So then I really enjoyed some of his teachings. I had read his books, and that was kind of my main motivations to apply. I came to ASU. It was it would be. It's interesting that ASU is actually known as a party school, but but one of the best professors for the program that I wanted to study was teaching here. So I applied here. I got in, and and that's it.
Wow. So really was just this one professor at this one school.
Yeah.
And that's how you picked Arizona.
I
basically.
picked Arizona. I flew I packed up my life in India. It was very interesting. I was still very young, 21. Emotional time for me because I had to say goodbye to a lot of my good friends, my family. But, if you got to do something in life, I just packed up 2 suitcases. That was my life. And I flew down here, took an education loan. And I come from a middle-class family back home in India, and took an education loan and worked my way up. And, it's been an interesting ride.
Well, so what was the drive though? Meaning, like, what did your folks do? And because that's great. You found this one professor. You had a real passion for this particular part of
Yeah.
science. That's all well and good, but you're going away from your family, going away from your friends. I mean, and you're a kid.
Yeah.
What, 18, 19? No, you're like maybe 21,
21.
right? That's a pretty big leap. There must have been someone who inspired that, a mentor, a family friend, one of your parents that wanted
I
more
wish.
for you, or was there something, a podcast you listened to? I guess there weren't podcasts
There
back
weren't
then.
podcasts back then. Yeah, my parents did want me to, it's again like it's like cultural programming. It's you want to do something with your life. So now you've done your graduation. Like I said, you become an engineer, and then you decide what you want to do in life, right? And then, but also what you want to do in life again is kind of culturally programmed, right? So a lot of people would choose, business programs, right? Like an MBA or for me, I knew that I did not want to get an MBA. Like,
Smart man.
I know your feelings about it. So I feel like and I kind of agree with your feelings. If you have to go to school for anything, go for something technical, where you actually get to learn something, right? So for me, getting a master's in science was probably the only way forward. I did want to. It was interesting. I did want to just also experience a culture which was not the same as mine, right? Like I was growing up, like just finished teenage, probably my most formative years of life, and it was a mix of that professor wanting to know more, grow technically, but at the same time getting to experience a new culture. Combination of all of those things. I wish I had a mentor who would tell me that, okay, this is how you should do it, this is how you should not do it, but I did not. I was literally, it was like an arrow in the dark.
Wow.
Yeah.
And how did your folks feel about it?
Very emotional. They were very sad.
Yeah, I imagine that must be hard.
My mom really didn't want me to leave. And the culture there is very family oriented, right? I'm lucky. I have a good family. Both my parents, we get along really well, and of course, like any kids and parents feel, during that time, I wanted to rebel, right? I wanted to do things which they would tell me not to do.
Yeah, get a master's degree in engineering. You're quite the rebel.
Well, for at that time, it was more like, stay home, stay at home, be in this country, like find a job, get an MBA, do what every other kid does, and that. So I was like, no, I'm gonna master's degree in in technology or like in electrical engineering is what I got my master's in. But yeah, she was very emotional. I was emotional too. It did not hit me till I was at the airport and I was actually leaving. That okay, I'm leaving.
So when we met, I'm living in Miami, but I
Yeah.
made the decision to move out to Arizona, and I was like one of the last few weeks I was there. My team connected with you and invited me up to meet Gurudev, and so I'm meeting with you at first, and then small talk whatever before I get to meet Gurudev, and you're like. I'm like, oh, where do you live? And you're like, Gilbert, Arizona. I'm like, my brother lives in Gilbert, Arizona. And, it was just such a weird coincidence. But then as we kind of went down the rabbit hole a little bit and I meet all these people, all of whom are supporting Gurudev and the art of living, presenting stuff to hundreds of millions, helping hundreds of millions of people around the world, it just struck me that it was this very unusual dichotomy of people that are really logical and, business and, focused, and then here's this other, what some people would call more woo-woo type of aspect where, hey, we're going to volunteer our time, we're going to work for free, and help people learn how to get their head right.
Yeah.
Those two things you wouldn't normally go together in the same person, and yet here are all of these people that are doing it. What is the driver behind all that?
I think as a human, there's an innate tendency to give back. I feel like we all feel good when we're giving back, right? For me personally, I can just talk about my experience. I think through the years, right, like coming to the US or even when I was in India, a lot of times, right, nobody, whether at home or at school, teaches us how to handle our own mind, right? And for me, learning how to breathe, do the breathwork techniques, the meditation techniques, for the lack of a better word, like I said before, it helped me stay sane, right? Like, and I feel like when there's a lot of pressure, and for me, I learned it in my formative years. A few things that we haven't talked about is during those years, I also went through a couple of heartbreaks and relationship stuff. And I think that there was nobody that I could kind of share this with, maybe a couple of friends. And it's hard to deal with that unless you have those techniques. So for me, when I learned the sky breath meditation, those techniques really help, ground me, give me my focus back, give me my discipline back, give me my energy back through the day. There were days when I would cry missing, I had gone through a heartbreak also in my high school, also when I was preparing for, IIT JAE. And I would like I really like one of my friends, right? And she did not like me back. But for me, that was one of the first experience, and we were very close, right? And things became awkward, and I started to miss my best friend, right? There were days when I would, just, be emotional and cry to myself. And then during those 30 minutes, 40 minutes, 50 minutes of breathing and meditation, as soon as I would do that, I would notice that my head would just be, I would be back, right? And for a lot of people, these techniques have done the same thing, right? Now, somebody might be struggling with relationships, somebody might be struggling with, whatever, finances, or they might be struggling with being more productive at work, or being, all of us, I feel, are fighting our own battles in one way or the other. And a lot of us lack that anchor, right? Like something that can bring us back to ground us, right? Bring us back. So for a lot of people, including myself, that became these breathing techniques, these meditation techniques, a way to train our mind to come back to the present moment, right? Because the mind keeps vacillating past and future, past and future. Either we are anxious about the future or fearful about the future, or we are upset or regretting the past, that, oh, why did I do this? Oh, I could have done this better. And life is happening in the present moments. And here's this figure, Gurudev, who's talking about it, right? And not just talking about it, he's walking the talk. For the first time in my life, I've read books about meditation. I've heard, now, especially more so than before, social media influencers talking about it. But when I meet them in real life, when I talk to them, nobody's walking the talk, right? And so here's this person who's actually walking the talk. And that difference makes him so inspirational for me, right? Anybody can talk about it, but if you're living it, then that's something to be inspired by. So for me, that was
it's
it.
definitely just not you, though.
It's just
I
not
don't
me.
know how many volunteers must there be in his organization. It's got to be thousands.
Thousands, I would
Right?
say, like, I don't know, thousands.
Yeah, so you have thousands of people having the same thing. And by the way, like, if I understood it from our other conversations, like, whenever he would come to the U.S., you basically drop whatever you're doing and show up.
No, I don't think people drop whatever they're doing. Like, they would still be carrying on, but they show up.
Right.
They show up. It's the same way that it's very interesting. Let's explore this a little bit more. Like, do you watch any sport? Which sport do you enjoy?
Like soccer, watch Messi or
Soccer,
Ronaldo.
Messi.
Yeah, right.
Right. Like, so why does Messi inspire so many people? There are like 22 people on the field, but
Right.
there's like millions of people watching those players just give it their all, because I think it's human tendency to get inspired by people who are just giving it their all, right? And I think those players in that 90-minute game or however long that is, they're giving it their all. And when they're giving it their all, you have just no other option but to just be glued to your TV sets or just go to the stadium and just you're so much in the moment, you're so engrossed, right? And when the players are not giving their 100%, they're just dilly-dallying, and they're just like they're not giving it their all. And that's when you're like, okay, let me take a break, let me go cook something, and I'll come back to the game. It's not that exciting or whatever. So I feel like even in life, we meet people, right? Like we meet mentors, or we meet people and who are just keeping at it, right? Like who are giving it their all, who are walking the talk, who are just so inspirational that you have no other option but to be like present, right? So for me, when I was very young, I observed that about him, right? How is he able to move thousands of people or like inspire, hundreds of thousands of people or millions at the same time? He's just giving it his all. So for me, a part of my dream growing up was also be successful, but I wanted personally to be able to get a chance to work with him.
Wow.
So for me, what I'm living my dream right now.
Well, so now, did the role you play, that you played or that you play in the art of living change when you were living in India versus when you came here to the U.S.?
Yeah, I mean, it's a volunteer-run organization, so there's no hiring or firing. It's it's a platform for you to do good, and there are thousands of people who use that platform to either inspire others or make a change in the society. So, for example, I teach a lot at ASU. I teach the sky breath meditation, the same technique. We have a club here, students club here. But a major part of and it's a longer program than, like we went through a program similar like that, a couple of weeks ago. But when I teach the students, they're in a group, they have so much energy, they have so much enthusiasm, and now they're able to tap into their source of energy. They're able to feel that sense of peace, that sense of calmness, which they have not felt over the years. And now they want to do something with this energy, right? So a major part of what they do is like, they take up a service project, and a lot of them, they have these great ideas, even simple ideas of, they go around the campus and they pass on, affirmations and nice notes or words of compliment to their student community. And believe it or not, a lot of people, as and when they're doing it, a lot of people come back and they're telling these stories, right? They're just, celebrating that, okay, they did this 1 hour of random act of kindness or whatever. A lot of them notice that, and this is just an experience out of ASU, a lot of these students are lonely. Even though on social media, everybody has friends that they're flexing with, they are, going to these parties, but loneliness is something that has become so prevalent in our society. So when some of these kids who take the program and they go with a kind word or a compliment, it really uplifts these students, and they want to know more. They're like, oh, what are you guys doing? Like, you look so happy, you look so vibrant, you look so alive, right? Everybody's showing or showcasing how alive their life is on Instagram, but really they're not feeling that. They're not feeling that freedom, love, joy, compassion. So how do we integrate these values into our life? Is through breathing and meditation. Because what happens is, when you are learning how to meditate, when you tap in, it's not that the situation around you is changing. It's mostly the stress goes away. And when the stress goes away, it's like your inner nature shines through. And all of us as humanity, our inner world is very kind, is very compassionate, is very, nobody's born a bad person, right? They want to support each other. They want to help each other. So with these techniques, I think people just come in touch with themselves and they just want to do good. And, so it's their way of giving back, or finding a way to volunteer, finding a way to be, helping somebody. And I think as humanity, we find meaning, I feel, psychologically speaking, in just being useful and just being of purpose, I guess.
No, I completely agree. Well, you did gloss over this a little bit, which was, you were so kind and generous enough to offer to do the breath work and meditation work with my brother. And I don't think I had a chance to tell you this, but, because obviously he's really struggling with his weight and so forth. And I was getting to a place of almost hopelessness, that I didn't really think that he was going to be able to turn that corner. And I actually think you might have saved my brother's life. It was weird. It was a combination of things, but the 3 days we spent together, like a switch got flipped in my brother. I haven't seen him ever quite like he is. He's really been. He's made such amazing progress, literally, since those 3 days we spent together, and I didn't get a chance to thank you as much as I wanted to.
No, I thank you for sharing that. And it's moments like this that I volunteer for. Right. And I know you're getting a little bit emotional, but inside, for me, like, you don't know what you're doing for me. Like, by sharing that, it feels like when you're living your purpose, and it does impact lives, right? With someone as deeply as what you shared for your brother. There's no greater sense of urgency or purpose that I can bring to myself.
Right.
And I feel like that is why this knowledge, this wisdom, has to reach millions. Right. And so that people find themselves, right? Everybody is looking to smile for others and find a partner, or find love here, find love there. But the feeling of realizing that you are love is something something
Right.
different, right? And then you start wanting to make a change for yourself, or for the lack of a better word, I don't know, improving is the right word, but you want to make a change,
Right.
right? Because something inside changes. I'm also still discovering what is it that changes, but there's something that changes when you come to your inner core of your heart, I guess.
Well, you'd mentioned before about loneliness. Why do you think it's become more prevalent? What do you think is the driver behind that? Because I differentiate between being alone and being lonely. Those are very
Yes.
different experiences. I know you've done silent meditations and, probably spent plenty of time alone, but lonely is a very different thing. What do you think's driving that?
I think it's a combination of things. I'm just thinking out loud here.
Yeah.
I would think social media is a big driver. We're all hooked up to our phones, and then just how competitive our world has become. Right? Everybody just I feel like in the in the effort to win the race, right, sometimes you do things which go against the human nature, right, or human, I don't know if morality is the right word even, but you end up, to win the race, to make more money, to be more successful, to live this picturesque life. A lot of times we compromise on our inner compass, and we compromise on letting go of things which we would not do otherwise. We end up doing things which we would not end up doing otherwise. So I feel like as a society, we need to calm down and cool down and relax a bit, I feel. And when we relax a bit, then we can see things clearly. We can, that's what I think.
So
What do you think?
You know, I think that I think that loneliness comes largely from insecurity.
Mm,
That not feeling like you deserve connection.
mm,
And I think you're right. I think that social media really kind of pours gasoline on the fire. I think that the human experience is one of, everyone feeling a little bit of at least a little bit of imposter syndrome.
right.
And I think that social media only exacerbates that. I think that when you don't feel like you're worthy, I think that that's where a lot of loneliness comes from.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, so you just relatively recently made the decision to leave your engineering path. So maybe you finally decided at 34, okay, now that I was an engineer, now I'm going to decide what I want to do with the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And I think, I know your mom had some health challenges that maybe that
Yeah.
was a factor, and kind of thinking about, maybe talk a little bit about that decision-making process, because as you know, I'm not a huge fan of corporate,
Yeah.
the corporate world in particular.
Yeah. I feel like, so when I got my master's, I needed a way to repay my loan. I enjoy learning, right? So I enjoy technology. I enjoy engineering, especially after, studying it for like 7-8 years. I did, thankfully, when I was doing my master's, I studied what I enjoyed, right? Like I had made my decision back then that I want to learn about this, So I found a job at one of the leading semiconductor companies. I worked for NXP Semiconductors here in the Valley, and then for a few months for Maycom Semiconductors. And for both those jobs, I was doing very cutting edge tech, right? So I was designing power amplifiers, and it's a very hardcore niche RF radio frequency kind of role. I was an engineer. I was climbing the success ladder pretty fast, right? I think I spent almost 10-12 years doing that. And I feel like I was stifled because of the corporate, not because of the nature of the job. I feel like I enjoyed doing, so my role was design. I was doing design, and my job challenged me technically, which made me innovate. I have 4 patents to my name. And so that part I was enjoying, right? I was enjoying facing challenges and overcoming that. And I feel like that still stayed consistent even in my decision-making process, in the sense now that, I'm setting up my own business, I'm enjoying the process of innovating, learning, or wanting to, my curiosity is having a kick right now. It's like great, like, learning new things. What stifled me, or what I was struggling with was these constant, mm, you know, uh, constant deadlines which had no relevance to reality and just the corporate culture.
Yeah.
You could say, and then the limitation that it comes up with. So for me, also, like you mentioned, 2025 was an interesting year because my mom, which I'm fairly close to my family. I love them. My mom had a heart attack, and my whole life flashed in front of me, and it was like, am I doing, what am I doing, am I doing the right thing? I questioned every decision that I made in the past, that you know um, so I was craving more freedom. I can't spend time with my family yet enjoy my own life, yet want to continue traveling for the art of living and teaching courses. I want to live this life, but my corporate job was kind of restricting me, in the sense that you could only take a certain days off in a year, right? Certain number of days off in a year, or you have to participate in meetings which are absolutely boring and a waste of time. Has no relevance to actually learning and implementing a lot of things. Um, so I feel like that was my trigger point, and I feel like I was feeling discontent from quite some time in my corporate job, and I think my mother's episode, right? Thankfully, touch wood, knock on wood, she's good, and but that was enough of an impetus, enough of a trigger point for me to just. It was literally, I told my boss that, hey, I'm flying to India tomorrow. I want to be with my mom. I went there, spent like a week, uh, and my mom is an emotional creature. She did not get operated on till she saw me.
Wow.
She was like, "No, I'm gonna." She had like a couple of heart attacks, back to back, and she's in the hospital. She's in the ICU, and she's refusing surgery. She's like, "No, I want to see my younger son too."
Wow.
And coincidentally, both my older brother, who I love a lot and really look up to him, he was in Dubai for his corporate thing, right? I was in Arizona for my corporate thing, and both of us, we had to like fly. We both flew back, you know, uh, just immediately. And as soon as we got back, she saw us both. She was happy. She was like, "Okay, now I can, you know, get whatever operated on," because she wasn't sure. Our family has a history of, like, her side of the family especially has a history of heart disease, and unfortunately she lost her father to a heart attack, and then her mother, when the doctors were operating her, operating on her, she went into a period of coma. So my mom was very afraid that she's not going to see her sons before she gets operated, even though it was a simple procedure, right? Like, technology is so advanced now, like a heart procedure is fairly so common that and she was being treated by the best of doctors, um, but she just had that fear.
Yeah.
So we saw her for a week, and then that was when I kind of decided that I want to be able to spend more time with them, be more flexible, and I emailed my boss and was like, "Boop, bye." I don't know what I'm gonna do with my life, but I'm not doing that, right? So,
Wow. So you didn't have your plan B lined up?
well, Z and I, my wife and
Yeah.
I, we were doing social media work, social media agency for, as a word of mouth for some of our friends for their brands, and she's really good at it, and I have good insights into marketing, and so so that was kind of like, it was kind of in development essentially, but I was not thinking of it as my fallback option. It just ended up becoming my fallback options. One of my friends actually, so through my agency, so one of my friends, they run this luxury Ayurvedic beauty line. It's called Shankara Naturals. Very nice, very pure products. They're manufactured out of DC. So he kind of encouraged me. So he gave me a call. He's like, "Hey, join us through your company. Join us as our CMO, and we would love your insights. And so that's what I'm doing right now. That they're one of our main clients, but at the same time, I'm committed to them 100% fully. Like I'm treating that as my full-time job, but it gives me that, there's that slight difference that I can work from home. I have that flexibility of hours. I want to, put my best foot forward. I'm driven. I'm finding my life back, stepping away from that corporate nonsense.
Do you wish you did it sooner? Or do you think it was the right time?
It was the right time.
Yeah.
I think it was the right time. I wish I did it sooner, but I'll like it felt like when I did quit, I had the opportunities waiting for me. So I think in that sense, it was the right time.
So, at what point did you decide that you wanted to launch your podcast? And you've been doing a podcast for quite a while.
Yes. Well, just this year, 2025. Oh, sorry, last year, 2025.
Okay. So, okay.
It's just been a few months.
Oh, for some reason I thought it was a little bit longer.
It's a very new show. So I was always intrigued by this format, right? And a lot of my work with Gurudev was, about, him being on different podcasts. So I was managing a lot of his schedule for the different podcasts. So, I'm so lucky because he's such a big personality. So I get to meet cool people like yourself. I've met Lewis Howes. I met several big names, Ed Milet, in the podcasting, in the business world through that. And what inspired me was that this is a great way to meet cool people and learn from them. So curiosity was, again, a factor in me deciding that I want to start a podcast. So I got to meet you. I got to meet some of the cool people that you were mentioning earlier.
Yeah.
My first episode was with Dave Asprey. I know your first episode was with him. So I think it's just a nice way to learn about people's lives and get inspired and meet them.
Yeah, it's people really, again, I have very few regrets in my life, but I wish I had done the podcast, 3 or 4 years earlier.
Same.
It's the coolest way to meet people. And every episode I've ever done, whether it's me as the guest or me as the host, I always learn something. And oddly, I don't know if you have this experience too, but I even learned from myself, oddly, which doesn't even make sense, right? But it's like it's the difference between thinking something and saying something.
Right.
Like, the question you asked me about, how I felt about loneliness.
Right.
I never thought about that till you asked me, and then I'm like, this is what I think.
Yeah.
Which, wasn't the thought was in there somewhere.
Right. It helps you. I feel it's a cool way to develop a friendship. Like some of my best friendships have happened over conversations like these. And I think we were always I was always having these conversations with my friends but it was never in front of a camera. But now it's just the difference is that it's, with a microphone and with cameras rolling.
Did it take you a while to get comfortable in front of the camera and talking on a microphone, or?
It took me like 2 episodes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the first one, I was fairly nervous. Dave doesn't know this, but he
didn't look nervous.
I did not. Oh, thankfully. And again, those breathing techniques, meditation techniques, really came in handy.
You've got a cheat code. I forgot.
I got a cheat code, and he flew into Scottsdale. He was here for a conference, and I knew him because he had interviewed Gurudev. So I knew him, and I was like, hey, why don't you? And he had done the Art of Living course. Many years ago when he was still like in the technical world. So I don't know many people know about Dave, but
he was in data centers or something.
He was kind of doing a lot of that computer science stuff, and so he met Gurudev. He got inspired. He did a course. On my podcast, that was his first time actually talking about. I did not know that he took a program like so many years ago. So we've been around. Art of Living has been around for so many years. It's incredible to see like a lot of the cool people that people enjoy have had their roots in sky breath meditation. So he sometimes still credits Sudarshan Kriya, or the sky breath meditation, to his beginning into biohacking and all of that stuff.
So I don't know if you remember, but when I got to meet Gurudev and I was asking him a question about how he felt the difference between whether happiness or contentment or peace was the right goal. How do you having been mentored by him for almost 2 decades now, right? You must have some interesting insights about that. And we haven't never really talked about that. I'm curious how you feel about things like happiness, contentment, and peace, and sort of what you strive for, if you strive at all.
Right. Well, at this stage of my life, I don't strive for it because I have it, I feel. There's a fun story that I remember. There's this old teacher. His name was Swami Vivekananda. There's a story that it's like almost like a lore in India. So, he was here in Chicago. He was walking on the street, and there was this professor who was kind of taunting him, like, in his unique way. So he was like, he said, like, if there was a $100 bill on the road, or a book of wisdom, what would you choose, right? And this guy says that, I would choose the $100 bill. He's like, what? Look, like, this is a meditation teacher. This is a, so-called wise person, and he's not choosing the book. He's not choosing the knowledge. He's choosing $100 bill. It's like, well, you only choose what you don't have, right? So, so it's just a funny story to, like, I just remembered this. I don't know why, but what I was trying to tell you was, over the years, I don't think that I'm an expert, right? Like, I feel like I'm still learning and growing on this journey myself. Between those three terms, happiness, peace, and what was the other one? Contentment. I feel like happiness is, when you are in kindergarten, you talk about a certain concept, and then when you're in middle school, you break the same concept, right? So when somebody's starting out, happiness is like this, yes, like, I want happiness in my life, which is true, which all of us, we all want happiness in our lives. But I think once you mature up, then you understand that both happiness and sadness is just an emotion. Then you go beyond that, right? And then comes contentment or peace, let's say. So in my opinion, I feel like if somebody wants to get started on a breathwork or a meditation journey, and if happiness is your driving factor, start there. Use that as a hook, start there. But then once you start meditating and start practicing, like for me in my life, I noticed that there's a little freedom that you get from your emotional mind, right? So happiness or sadness or a different emotion doesn't matter as much, because there's something even deeper than that which is grounding you. So I feel like personally for me, thankfully, and I don't want to jinx it, I feel that I've crossed, at least very humbly, I'm saying that I've crossed that portion of this experience where, different emotions don't bother me as much. I'm still able to move past it fairly quickly, and go into that realm of being content, being peaceful. And I think being content does not mean that you're not ambitious. I feel like there's a way you can balance both, being ambitious and being content at the same time.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. Well, maybe, and again, I obviously spent 3 days with you doing this, but if you were just going to give the listeners just one quick technique, breathing technique, to help them sort of gain control, of their feelings or emotions, if you don't mind me putting you on the spot.
Sure, I'm happy to. I think so the sky breath meditation obviously takes, it's an intense process. So I can't teach that here on a camera, like in such a short time, but I can maybe teach them a 2-minute thing that they can do by themselves. And I don't want to sound very cliched and just go deep breathing. Like I want to do a little bit more than that maybe. So this technique is called the alternate nostril breathing. It's another thing about the art of living. A lot of the breathing techniques are science-backed. So our left side of the body, is connected to the right brain, and our right side of the body is connected to the left brain. And a lot of times when we are anxious, we crave, like a lot of neuroscientists would tell you that we crave this feeling of homeostasis, where we want to bring balance into our lives, right? This is the reason why a lot of times when you come back from a heavy day of work, you want to cross your legs, right? Or you want to sit like this, because you're kind of engaging both the sides of the body, essentially, and you're craving homeostasis, right? So this is an easy way to bring homeostasis, so you breathe in from the left, and then you breathe out from the right, and you breathe in from the right and breathe out from the left. So it looks something like this. You do Spock fingers. And the last 2 fingers on your left nostril, the thumb on the right, and the middle 2 just gently in between your eyebrows. You can close your right nostril, breathe in from the left. So now close the left, breathe out from the right. And then breathe in from the right. Breathe out from the left. So you can, if our listeners continue like this for like a few minutes, like 5 minutes or something, you will notice that immediately your mind chatter starts calming down.
Because I learned that from you when we did the 3-day thing with my brother, and I definitely found it useful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a quick hack.
Yeah.
To calm the mind.
Well, so how long have you and Z been together now?
Almost 3 years now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, so I'd love to kind of know your view about love and relationships, and kind of I would imagine. Well, I'm curious. Did any of your view on those topics come from The Art of Living, or did they come from somewhere else?
Personally, for me, it did. I heard Gurudev say this once in one of his talks about relationship, that when two people are getting together, right? If they have a common goal, or if they have a common purpose, let's say, a shared purpose, then it's like two parallel lines, right? And if that's missing, then it becomes like two intersecting lines. And I think that part kind of stayed close with me. So when I was choosing a partner, I was always looking for a person who has similar views on life, a similar purpose. That, okay, so thankfully she's also a meditation teacher, and that was before I met her. So she was already into meditation, breathing, and that's kind of like what I feel my purpose is, to be able to help people handle their own mind and their own emotions through these evidence-based techniques. So she had a similar goal, a similar purpose. Not to say that we don't have our hard days. I think relationship takes work. So there are great days, fantastic days, and every once in a while there's a hard day where we would argue over something silly. But I think that also is important in a relationship. It's like salt in food, right? But as long as it's only that much quantity, like salt in food, right? Like not like
a pinch,
the whole meal. Yeah, like a pinch. So I feel like we have a similar goal that we work towards. And I think that's what made me, kind of get together with her, and for her too.
So is Gurdev have a partner?
No.
Has he ever?
No,
or is it like he's so evolved that's not a thing?
Yeah. So the like there are different styles of gurus, right? Like, so the path that he chose was the one where you don't have partners, right? No, and if you ask him, he would. I'm guessing this. I don't know what exactly he would say, but I feel like he's so committed to the world that he's probably doesn't have any time or any inclination per se as well.
That's so interesting. How do you think about that? Because this is obviously a mentor of yours, someone you obviously look up to and have for a couple decades. How do you think about that? Do you think like, hey, so he basically, because I know like, I'm not religious, but some people will say, oh, well, I'm married to the church. Like a priest will say, I'm married to the church, or a nun will say, God is my husband or whatever.
Right.
So I'm guessing he basically there's nothing left for him to give because he's given himself to the world.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's what it is. And it's very interesting also. And again, I think it might be a cultural thing, right? In India, like gurus are very common, right? Like in the sense, but so you're born with the ideas of yogis and sages, mystics who want to master their own mind, their own breath. Like it's all. There used to be a time where if you do not have a mentor or a guru literally means giver of light, right? And a loose synonym to it in English would be like a mentor, right? So there would be times in ancient India when if you do not have a guru, that's when you would be called like an orphan, and not when you did not have parents, right? So a mentor was probably a little bit more important. But then at the same time, parents also had relevance. They would say the mother is the first guru. That's how we would be brought up. Like, she's your guru, she's your teacher, she's your, like she always means well. So somebody who means well for you and who can show you the next step or, wants to guide you. So it's not uncommon for gurus to not have a partner, like a, in the sense of a romantic partner, right? But at the same time, you see them in a land of thousand gurus. There's somebody who stands out, right? Somebody who truly has mastered the art, right? Like, and that's when, that's when somebody like Gurudev comes about, and you'll see people drawn to them, just not because of their teachings, like I said, but also because they walk the talk and they live it so effortlessly that it is inspiring, like that.
So when we started the podcast and I'd asked you about, did you have a mentor that sort of, encouraged you or guided you in any way in your decision to come to the U.S.? And I know Gurudev, you were involved with him at that point. Is that not the kind of guidance that he provides? Like, would that be the kind of conversation you would have had with him, or not really?
Well, when I ask him a question, so to me it was not a question, even though it felt like a major move. I felt it was not an important question to ask him, like, but there are people who do, right? I see a lot of people who come and meet him. They would talk about, relationship with him, or talk about, work situations or careers, and he would advise them all, right? Like, he wants to be as accessible as possible. This is very interesting. When you're a celebrity, you want to be as inaccessible as possible. But here, he wants to be as accessible as possible. So I've seen him advise on different situations, different random scenarios, which sometimes I can't even imagine that, I feel for that person, like if somebody's going through something. But then at the same time, personally for me, he's also, somebody beyond the mundane, right? Like, so my job and my relationship, and even though it's very important to me, right, I feel I can manage that on my own, right? Like with my own agency, and I have enough people around me to tell me what to do and what not to do, and it's almost like a personal decision that I want to save him for something more important, right? Like, so if I have a question which is truly pressing, like things which are truly intimate in my heart, which I can't ask anybody else, which I can't ask Google, I would ask him.
So tell me the question you've asked him, if you don't mind sharing. That was the kind of thing you would go to him for that you can't find on Google.
I think a couple of them are too personal that
That's
I may
fine.
not share on the podcast. Yeah.
Okay. Well, it's funny. I will share the one that I asked him.
Yeah, please do.
Because, it stopped me in my tracks. So I'd asked him that question about happiness, contentment, and peace. And I think his answer was he would, of those three, he would choose peace.
Mm-hmm.
And then I asked him about gratitude as it relates, because then I think he said, but perhaps beyond that's enlightenment. And then I asked him how he felt about gratitude as it relates to enlightenment or peace. And his answer was, he goes, nothing, I'm paraphrasing, obviously, not that there's anything wrong with gratitude, but it is a very me-centric thing. I'm happy for my career, my family, my girlfriend, my car, my whatever, me. And that that once one has become a little bit more enlightened, that maybe gratitude's kind of baked into the system.
Right.
And I never thought about it that way, because I still am grateful. I still practice gratitude, and I see utility in it. But it is very me-centric.
Yeah, and I think that's where what I was talking about, like there are different levels to this, right? Even on this journey of meditation, or whatever you call this, a path, it's almost like, imagine kindergarten to 12th grader, right? For somebody who's starting out, like somebody who's struggling. And that's why this platform, like for example, this podcast is going to go to thousands of people who would have no idea about meditation or breath work, or even they're just starting on their mental health journey, right? So for them, I've seen him say, yes, practice gratitude, right? Gratitude is very important. When you were talking to him personally, right, maybe he knows that you are a little bit more advanced than somebody who's just starting out. And then you can take this next level of wisdom and apply it in your life, right? So the answer can look very different to somebody who's very, just starting out versus somebody who's advanced a little bit and is like, okay, now you drop that concept and think about this, right? And it's a new perspective about the same situation.
Well, it definitely stopped me. It was like bucket of cold water in my face. I just had never thought of it.
Mm-hmm.
And when he said it, I'm like, duh. But like, I would have never thought of it.
Yeah.
Which is, probably where his the brilliance sits there. Well, Jitesh, I can't thank you enough for doing this podcast, for everything you've done for my brother.
Thank you.
Where can people find you, The Art of Living, your podcast, and everything you're up to?
Well, if they want to find me, Instagram is probably the easiest, Jitesh Vaswani. And Art of Living's website is artofliving.org. And maybe I can send it to you. You can put it in the description if that's
Absolutely.
okay. So artofliving.org. And what was the other question?
Oh, yeah, just the Art of Living, where they can find you, and then just,
The podcast.
Yeah, the podcast.
So
yeah.
my podcast is called Beyond the Known Podcast. So if you like conversations like this, I have similar conversations to these. And David, you're such a great host, and so definitely do follow him if you're watching me from my platform. And if you want to learn more about me, you can follow Beyond the Known Podcast as well.
Thank you again.